Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to another Mental Health Monday here on Even Tacos Fall Apart. I am super glad that you are here to join us today. We are going to be talking about healing the nervous system. Let me get the question queue. I knew. See, I knew there was something, but here we go. I'm getting the question queue open right now. If you have any questions for me or for our guest or about the topic, healing the nervous system, feel free to type them into the chat. We'll make sure to address them while we are here and while we are live together. But I am joined tonight by Brandy B. Doyle, and I'm so grateful that she has been able to come and join us, and we're going to talk about this. But Brandy, thank you so much just for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah. So, B has walked through some of the darkest places that a person can go, and that's from combat in Afghanistan, PTSD, suicidal ideations, alcohol abuse, and she's really come out the other side healing. And that's just going beyond, yes, I went through all of these things, but really into that healing. She's as I mentioned, a combat veteran, a nurse practitioner, intuitive healer, and spiritual teacher who now helps others reconnect with themselves through a blend of medicine, astrology, ancestral wisdom, and nervous system healing, which is what we're here to talk about tonight. She is also working on her first book about this journey. So, welcome again to Even Tacos Fall Apart, B.
Thank you. Thank you again so much for having me.
And if you are looking to connect with her anywhere, I've got some socials for you. I'm going to post those to the chat right now. Make sure you click through to the website, to all these socials, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Check out a couple of things. If you do wind up connecting, make sure you like a post, make sure you repost a post, whatever that looks like on each platform, and make sure you leave a comment on a post, and that'll tell all those algorithms that you want more of her content. So make sure you do all those things, and we will then get all that engagement. It'll be really super fantastic. So,
Yes.
Dee, I would love to know, just to kind of kick us off here, what made you interested in specializing in mental health and in intuitive healing?
Well, it was really the journey that I walked, my own path. And what I came to really know to be true for myself was that there was something missing from the current, structure of mental health in the Western world. And through my own journey, the long and winding road that it was just this sort of aha moment of there is more to healing than, what we're looking at in the traditional Western medicine model. And, I dabbled in all sorts of things along my healing journey. And now I'm able to sort of combine all of these modalities that really helped me along my journey.
I feel like that's what we hear a lot whenever we get into, especially the healing and the trauma side. Almost always, I need to go back and like calculate percentages and everything and be like, this many percent of my guests who now specialize in trauma or healing or something like that originated out of their own stories or out of something that they witnessed happen to someone close to them or something like that. But I feel like that's a really common thing. Did you ever have anything else you were like, I want to do this when you were a kid or anything like that?
When I was young, I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian, but I learned, what that really entailed somewhere along the way, and it was like, no, never mind. That's not for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's a very common goal for people. I went as far as like volunteering at a veterinarian's office to do all their grunt work and stuff for them. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, it's like sometimes, life doesn't always work out that way, but it's all
yeah.
good.
Yeah. That it was short-lived. I think I knew from, that young age just the desire to help people and I thought, well, nursing's the path. At the time, no school counselor or anything was telling me that I could be an astrologer or an intuitive healer. So
Yeah.
that came later.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm glad that you had even someone to recommend something like nurse practitioner. That's a profession that we obviously need a lot more of.
Yes, yes, we do.
Do you have a true crime story that fascinates you?
I was into the true crime for a while, but I had to like disconnect myself from it because I'm one of these people that's, I get so invested in these things and it was
Yeah.
like I couldn't like separate that from, what was going on in my life. And for me, there just came to be a point where it was like too much for me. I'm
Hmm.
very empathetic as well. And so I had to step back from the true crime, but, hey, props to all the true crime lovers out there.
There's,
It is so fascinating, right? And even as a
yeah.
kid, I remember watching like Unsolved Mysteries.
Hmm. I think that Unsolved Mysteries show is where a lot of our fascination came from, just in general. Like, there's a whole generation of us out there who grew up, and it's this guy walks through the mist, and then he tells you what you're about to hear, and
Mm,
all this, all this mystery, and they really made it entertainment for us. And I feel like sometimes that continues. But you're right, sometimes it becomes too much, and if it's something that isn't serving you, you got to know when to cut that out.
absolutely, absolutely.
So what was life like for you when things were really at their darkest? And what was or I guess was there a moment where you realized that something needed to change for you?
Yeah, that's such a good question. When I came home from overseas, from Afghanistan, I was dealing with so much, these wounds of PTSD. And what ended up, I learned later on was, it was more complex than that, definitely complex PTSD at play. And that was happening. But in hindsight, I look back and now I understand on a deeper level that what I was actually experiencing was more than anything was this disconnection from purpose.
Mm,
I came home, I was 25 years old, and I truly, people were going so far as to like call me a hero and things like that. And I truly felt like I had already done in my life the most important thing I could do. And so that really left 25-year-old me just feeling like, well, what's next then? How, if the best of my life, so to speak, or that deep kind of important work is already behind me, then what's next? And so, really, that loss of purpose, and everything else I was dealing with, I was numbing, trying to cope with alcohol, which became problematic. And that just led me into this really dark place. I think that loss of purpose is, it'll take you into a hole. And there were points that I certainly, I wasn't sure that I even wanted to carry on this earthly realm anymore. So, there was a suicide attempt along the way and
mm,
stint in a community mental health hospital. So, those were some of the darkest moments. And the turning point really happened, at a certain point. It was like I came to understand that there had to be more than life and sort of embarked on this healing journey. But I think the most pivotal point in that journey was when I found out I was pregnant with my son. And that realization really hit that, you know, I can't keep living this way, and
mm.
I don't want to pass this on to my son. My grandfather was a World War II veteran and raised my mom, and I started to see kind of that thread too. And so it was really like I can't pass this on to him, and it wasn't just about me anymore at that point.
Yeah. I Motherhood really it can kick you into gear a little bit. Sometimes. I mean, obviously it doesn't always. There's lots of examples of that not happening for folks, but sometimes it does. Sometimes it just goes, "Oh, you're pregnant. You got shit to take care of now."
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like for me, it amplified so much too in
Yeah.
many ways, like healing, but also like triggering. You suddenly see even wounds that maybe you didn't even know about. It's like, oh
Mm.
my gosh, the parent wounds come through. And yeah, so it was such a mixed bag of things happening at that point.
Yeah. And now, we touched on it earlier, but you had this background as a nurse practitioner. Did that shape the way that you understood what was happening in your own body and your own mind at all?
Well, I mean, I would say I had a logical sort of understanding
Hmm.
of what was happening. Okay, I understand what these nightmares are and the flashbacks and all that, but still kind of coming from that logical place and being really disconnected from my body and what healing meant, and not really having a lot of tools besides what was, given in the medical textbooks. And and none of which seemed to really be overly helpful for me. So that kind of led into even more of like a spiral, right? It's like, well, I'm doing all the things that I know from my training and background that are supposed to be helping, and for me, they just weren't, maybe the
Yeah.
needle would move a little bit, but yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes there's sort of a running joke in like the medical community that nurses are the worst patients. It's like I knew maybe too much in some regards, and but yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think that's probably the case for a lot of professions, but nurses in particular, doctors in particular. I can tell you from growing up, anyone first responder in particular, the same. It's like they feel like I know enough. I know enough. I don't need you telling me what to do.
yeah, absolutely.
And it's interesting to hear you say it's one thing to have all the knowledge, like to approach it from a very logical standpoint. That's something that I struggle with sometimes in therapy. Is like logically, I know what's going on. I know theoretically what needs to happen next. But okay, so I already know it. So why am I here?
Yeah,
And it's like
all that.
clearly because it's not quite hitting the way that it needs to hit, and maybe you need something a little bit different.
Yeah, that tendency, especially I feel like as women, we try to over intellectualize everything. And when you're on that healing journey, that can be a little bit problematic, right? Because it's
Yeah,
one more thing for me that I just really got down on myself with, the shoulds and well, this should be happening. I'm doing everything logically that should be helping me on my healing journey, but yet here I am still,
yeah.
really in a dark place.
Yeah, it can be really easy to go, oh, this is where I should be. This is what
Yeah,
should be happening.
the mind is such a powerful tool, right?
Yeah, yeah. So we're here to talk about healing the nervous system, and I think we've probably all heard this term, dysregulated nervous system. But for folks who haven't heard that term, can you explain in really plain terms what does it mean when your nervous system is dysregulated? What does that look like day to day?
Yeah, so there's a term that is spoken about in the world of mental health and the medical community, and it's this terminology window of tolerance. So, a healthy nervous system, we have a wide window of tolerance, meaning we can fluctuate, we can have a bad day, but it doesn't knock us off that window of tolerance. We're able to really respond to things that happen to us rather than react. And so that's the goal, is having this, strong window of tolerance. And when we're dysregulated, when our window of tolerance is really, really narrow, we have that tendency to, snap at our kids or be in that mode of like road rage, however it shows up. That's fight or flight. Some of us, our default mode is more that freeze, where we just sort of freeze as it sounds. We kind of have this inability to move forward on things. And so that would be what that could look like in everyday life.
Yeah, and I I think whenever you're saying things like that window of tolerance, do some people have a bigger window of tolerance and some people have a smaller one just naturally? Like, is there a general, if you've got a teeny tiny one, you probably are dysregulated. Is that always a sign, or do some people just naturally have a smaller window of tolerance for things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're all wired differently. And in my work personally, that's where I love to lean into somebody's astrology as well, because we are all wired differently. And, we're all coming in with different traumas, whether that's from childhood or collective trauma. My belief is that we do all, whether we feel we had a great childhood or not, we're all carrying some form of trauma, right? We have ancestors that can pass things down through DNA. So naturally, yes, some people have a wider window of tolerance. Some people have a more narrow window of tolerance.
Oh, do we lose the video part of it? Oh no, there you are. Okay, great. Oh,
Yay!
that's okay. So you're talking about kind of that ancestral trauma and all of that. So Can you talk about that a little bit? What is that ancestral trauma? How do you heal that? And how does, I guess, maybe start with how does something happen that happened to your grandparents? How does that show up in your nervous system today? And then how do you heal from that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can certainly use my own story as an
Yeah,
example. My grandfather was, I'm a storyteller. I think that
I love
helps to
that. Yes.
bring things to light for people rather than trying to read something out of a textbook.
Hmm.
But, my grandfather was a POW in World War II, and he came home, and in those days, the terminology for post-traumatic stress was not really widely utilized. They were shell shock or whatever they called
Yeah.
it. But he had some incredibly, unhealthy coping patterns. He turned to alcohol, to drugs, and was not able to be emotionally attuned. And that was partly the trauma, partly the alcohol abuse as well. But this is the person that's then raising my mother.
Mm, yeah.
And so this is the what's being modeled to her. And she's not getting that nurturing and that care, right? And so it's passed down in that way as well. And also on the for any science lovers out there, the field of like epigenetics is actually showing that not only is it passed down in like certain behavioral patterns and things, but actually in our genes, right? And it's not that we're doomed to some sort of fate if our grandfather was an alcoholic. These genes we can sort of switch on and off, if that makes sense in your brain. It's not that we're fated to something like that, but the patterns are there, right? The predisposition to it is there.
Yeah. And whenever you're talking about it being in the DNA, it being in the genes and everything, so I'm curious if we are as mothers modeling a different pattern of behavior than what's in our DNA, what's in our genes, but clearly we've already passed some things on to our kids. Has there been any studies on what's the likelihood of it coming back into the cycle, or it's the nature versus nurture kind of question, but how likely are you to be able to break that cycle if you're consciously modeling a different behavior?
Yeah, that's a great question. In terms of studies, I would have to look into that a little bit deeper, but you know, I love to blend sort of the science and the spirit, and I do believe that in the spiritual side of things, we're all here for different purposes, right? I came into this world to be that generational curse breaker. That may not show up for everybody, right? So the patterns may continue, but it would be fascinating to sort of look at the studies and see, what's the likelihood or that. But understanding too that we're all here for a different purpose and a different path, and maybe there's still lessons in this generational line. The curse is not meant to be broken yet. So many, many different ways you can sort of look at that question, I think.
Yeah. I I would imagine those studies would have to be really long.
Yeah.
You'd have to have families willing to get in there.
Yeah.
Obviously, you could do like a survey type study, but
Yeah.
it could
Yeah. A
be
lot of it would probably be like anecdotal too. I
yeah.
think it would be really hard to do like some kind of double blind placebo
Hmm.
study. Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, it would. So, whenever you started on this journey, what were the first, and they could be small things, they could be big things, what were the first things that started to calm your nervous system before you had the full roadmap for yourself figured out? Or what were some of those first things?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I was still very much in that logical Western, this is how we heal, this is how we get better. And when I wasn't getting better in that model, it was like, okay, I'm going to try to sort of step out, stick my toe into the water of something that sounds maybe different or is outside the box. And the first thing that I tried was actually acupuncture.
Hmm.
And, you know, to me, coming from that very logical brain place, I understood that it worked with energy centers and things like that. And so it felt a little foreign. It felt a little uncomfortable at first, but after one session and it worked, I was like, wow, okay. I immediately fell asleep on the table, and it was like very brief, maybe 20 minutes or something, but it felt like the most restorative just rest. I felt like this sense of rejuvenation return, and I kept going back and back and back. And the practitioner was just lovely. She would leave me on the table because she knew I needed rest. And
Hmm.
yeah, that ended up being some of the most profound healing. And it really sparked my curiosity, well, if these needles and certain energy points can kind of open me up in this way, what else is possible? What else is, considered maybe non-traditional, but could also be effective?
Was there anything that you kind of went on from there to say, all right, acupuncture worked, I'm going to try this next? And did you have anything that didn't work that you tried after you moved away from the Western medicine side of things?
Gosh, I mean, I feel like I dabbled in so much.
Yeah.
In my book, I talk about sort of this methodology that I created, and there's a phase in the methodology where it's like this scrambling, like the squirrel gathering
Yeah.
nuts, and just, I was very much in that phase, grasping at anything and everything. And so there was a lot of things that, I wouldn't say maybe didn't work, but didn't necessarily resonate, if
Sure.
that makes sense. Because, I don't want to say it doesn't work, but for me, didn't resonate. For
Hmm.
somebody else, that could be the thing they swear by. So I don't want to, put a bias on anything, but yeah, that's part of the journey, finding out, what resonates, what doesn't.
That's a good way to look at it too, because if it doesn't work for me, but it might not work for me because it doesn't fit my lifestyle. It's not
Mhm.
even, oh, I don't have the time to go and get acupuncture once a week or whatever. So acupuncture doesn't work for me. But it's not that the practice itself isn't good. It's just that it doesn't fit into what I need. And I've never tried acupuncture. I would love to, but that's it. I don't know that they have any of that around here. I would have to look into that and see. I'm kind of in a very farmish country town, so
Yeah, you never know though. I mean, I
that's
was
true.
surprised. I was surprised on my journey to kind of once you step into that world, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is more commonplace than I had realized.
yeah, and I'm sure. I mean, there's big cities close enough
Yeah.
to me that I could go. I could go north. I could go west, and I could find somewhere. I'm sure. Now, you mentioned the bridging the science and the spirit in your work. How do practices like astrology and ancestral healing, how do those work on a physiological level in the nervous system?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, that bridging of science and spirit, there's so many places that that's really starting to happen. The ancient people practiced a lot of yoga, and now we understand on a scientific level the benefits of this. So that's when I really geek out, is when we start to see these studies that prove the things that people have been doing for centuries. And to my knowledge, there hasn't been anything. We know the ancients practiced astrology. There's evidence of that on all historical sites and things across the globe. But in terms of like scientific studies backing that or proving that, that's coming down the pipeline. I feel certain about that. But, for me, it's anecdotal, right? Like,
Yeah.
it was something that really helped me along my journey. And through the astrology, we can see a lot of these ancestral patterns. And the ancestral patterns, now that is something slightly different, right? That is something that epigenetics is being studied as we speak. There are new studies coming out all the time about the way that these things are passed down through lineage. And so that is something that, science and spirit are really sort of starting to catch up to. And the astrology is coming, though. I know it.
Is there anything that you're like, is there a study that's ongoing right now or anything that you've heard about lately that gets you really excited to see where things are going?
I have been really excited to, and you can tell me if I'm not allowed to go here, but there's been a lot of emerging stuff coming to the forefront about psychedelic medicine.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that, it's not for everybody. I talk a lot
Hmm.
about safety in the body as sort of step one of healing, safety in the nervous system. And so for somebody who's, still kind of in the midst of trauma or whatever, it may not be the best option, but there's so much promise in the realm of psychedelics, and especially one particular root from Africa, ibogaine, which
Hmm.
there's been a lot of research in the US, even in the great state of Texas. And so I'm really excited as somebody who leaned on the plant medicine, and now as a nurse practitioner, I work with ketamine, which is another psychoactive compound. I've just seen, the beauty that these medicines can bring to the table in terms of healing and the potential and the real data that's there, especially with the ibogaine for things like opioid dependence, treatment resistant depression. I think the latest studies that came out said that, chronic opioid users who experience ibogaine one time have an 80% rate of never going back to opiates again. They use
Wow.
ibogaine twice, it's like in the 90s. So just
Yeah.
incredible, incredible promise in that realm.
Yeah, no, those are some things we've taught. We've done a whole episode on ibogaine therapy. We've done a whole episode on MDMA therapy. We've done a whole episode, multiple episodes on just psychedelic therapy in general. And every single person that I've talked to about it has said the same thing. Like it depends on the individual and what their needs are and how safe they can be in their practice and everything. And yeah, that's something that I am so glad it's getting more attention in a good, in a sciency way, not in a like, oh no, everyone's gonna be on drugs kind of panic way, because that's definitely where it could go in Texas for sure. That's definitely where it could go. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going on here that I'm like, y'all are absolutely crazy for not seeing the benefits here. But yeah, it's exciting whenever stuff like that is coming out, and it's starting to get the attention that it deserves. So I like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, mental health, there's clearly a mental health crisis in this
Yeah.
country. And, obviously we didn't get here because the current modalities are working, right? So, and from an astrological standpoint, it's like we're in the age of Aquarius, and that's really about thinking outside the box for the better good of humanity. And so, how very Aquarian that it's all kind of coming to the forefront. And I'm excited to continue to see where that research goes and how many lives can be saved from it.
100%.
Hmm.
Now, we're talking about all of this, and you're a veteran, and a lot of veterans, and even just trauma survivors who aren't veterans, but a lot of the time they might resist something that sounds spiritual or woo-woo or whatever label you want to put on that. What would you say to someone who is maybe skeptical but clearly still struggling?
Yeah, yeah. I love a healthy skeptic. I was that skeptic. I mean, especially coming from the military background, there's not a lot of room for things like leaning on intuition, right? It's very black and
Hmm.
white, and decisions have to be made that in a split second that, could save someone's life or not. And so, I think it's normal. I think it's healthy to have some degree of skepticism, right? We all need to discern for ourselves what is the best. But for me personally, it's like I got to a point where literally the mentality was, I have nothing to lose at this point. I have nothing to lose. And just knowing in my heart of hearts that there was some dissonance there, right? And I've heard different sort of spiritual teachers, even mental health professionals talk about the root of suffering really truly is like this disconnection from purpose, from source, however you see it. And when we start to reconnect to that sense of purpose, whatever that looks like, maybe that's a belief in God or some kind of higher power, or just having a reason to wake up every day, that's when shifts really start to happen in the healing journey.
I think one of the things that you're kind of throwing out there a little bit, I want to be a little more direct about, because if you're to the point where yes, you're a healthy skeptic, you've tried all the normal things, all the normal routes. It's not going to harm you. What do you have to lose by trying it? Like
Mhm.
that's something that I heard it kind of between the lines a little bit in what you said. But is that something that you would flat out say? Like, what do you have to lose to try it?
Yeah, and I think, in some ways that sounds a little cold or lacking compassion, but it's not meant to come across that way. It's,
Yeah.
truly from this heartfelt place of I was there too, and it does come to a point where it's like, look, if I don't do something different, I'm going to continue, suffering,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm going to move it in that direction where I again decide that I just don't want to even live anymore, right? So,
Yeah.
truly, what do you have to lose, right?
Yeah. You're much further down your healing path now. Are there any daily practices or habits that really make the biggest difference for you that anyone could adopt?
Yes, I love to start my day with gratitude. It's like, oh God, I woke up today and I'm not in that place where I dread that. Like, damn it, I woke up today. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I'm alive, and every breath, every morning is a chance to start new. So I try to remember my gratitude before I even get my feet on the floor. And I'm a mom, so sometimes mornings are crazy, but I love to get a little breath work in. Breath work has been really pivotal for me on my journey. And I have a ritual of I don't drink coffee anymore. Sorry, coffee lovers, but way too stimulating for me. But I love to make a cup of cacao, and it's like a ritualistic thing for me. I melt the chocolate and I spend the time adding the cinnamon and salt and what I like in it, and just setting the morning with a bit of a ritual. It's just
Mm-hmm.
making my normal beverage, but it makes every morning feel a little special.
I like that. And ritual is really important also, and just making sure that you know what's coming, your body knows what's coming, and then if you have kids, it's almost impossible not to have some sort of rituals because they always have schedules. It's
Yeah.
wild. It's like, okay, well, every day pretty much on our calendar is here's the activities.
Yeah, and
Here's what we're
somebody
doing.
may not even have to change anything to get that
Hmm.
ritual in. Like if you already make coffee or tea in the morning, that can be the ritual. Just
Hmm.
doing it, when we talk about ritual, it's just doing something mindfully. That's how I view it. And so being a little bit more intentional as you're grinding the coffee or putting it in the coffee pot, and just really trying to sense into the gratitude of, oh, I get to make this coffee, I get to enjoy this, and that's your ritual, and you didn't even have to change anything.
Yeah,
The coffee anyway, right?
that's true. I like the intentional part of that. So,
Mm-hmm.
in general, how long does it take to heal your nervous system? Is there a timeline on that?
Everybody wants a quick fix. Everybody wants to
Yes.
hear that it is something, just, this destination.
Uh-oh, I may have lost audio. Let's see. Oh, can you hear me? So this is Riverside doing its thing again, I'll bet. Okay, this is what I was taught. This is why I gave a warning. I think if you leave and come back, or you can try switching your audio in Riverside, but I think it won't let you while we're live. Yeah, yeah. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Y'all feel free to ask questions while we're here in live. there's always there's always something, right? There we go.
I'm back.
And
Can
I
you
hear
hear
you.
me?
I don't understand why that happens, but that is okay.
Yes. Well, we're here now. That's all that matters.
Yes, yes.
Cool.
Okay, so I lost you. We were talking about the just the timeline for healing the nervous system, and you were saying no, everybody wants that quick fix. They want that quick answer, but and that's kind of where you cut out.
Leave everybody in suspense. But yeah, healing to me doesn't, it just doesn't work that way. Healing is not a destination where one day we wake up and we're healed, right? Because there's always going to be a trigger. There's always a new level of self-awareness that we might discover and have to learn to integrate. And so rather than thinking about, how long does it take to become healed or to regulate my nervous system, it's, how wide can I grow that window of tolerance? And having that grace and that compassion and the understanding that healing is not linear. There's going to be things that creep up because, what happens when we have to say goodbye to a pet or a parent or, any kind of loved one, and we're back in that, cycle of grief and despair. So healing is not linear, right? It's about really expanding that window of tolerance, though, so that when things happen in life, when the unexpected challenges happen, we're able to move a little bit more fluidly rather than getting stuck back in, fight or flight or freeze, whatever it is.
Now, if there's not a quick answer, if there's not a like, what's the timeline? What are
No, I'm
some what are some green flags that tell you that your nervous system is starting to heal?
Yeah, I mean, I think so many people, they just start to get that sense. And for a lot of the people I work with, it's honestly like family and loved ones that start to notice shifts because we're all our own worst inner critic, right? So family just noticing that, you're not quite as reactive, or insert whatever word, right? You're not quite as angry. You're not drinking quite as much as you used to. So whatever, these little tiny shifts, and usually it has a lot to do with not being quite so reactive, whatever
Mm,
reactive looks like for a certain person.
yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That other people will notice it before you might even, and not to say that you won't notice a little bit of change in yourself, but uh, sometimes other people are paying more attention to you as a whole than you are just to your things that you can get in there and really dig at. So I like that.
Yeah, it's like any other, journey, like physical healing. Other people tend to notice those who it's like, oh, it looks like you're back in the gym, or you've lost weight, or did something different, and it's like, oh, well, I see myself every day. I'm in these
Yeah,
patterns every day, so I may not notice as much as somebody, around me.
yeah, 100%. Are there any free or low cost resources that you would point people towards if they can't afford a healer or a practitioner right now? Where should somebody start?
Yeah, I know. Well, everything is crazy right now, but also, healing is not a luxury. You are absolutely worth it. But yes, a lot of this can get pricey. However, there are amazing resources out there in terms of free classes on YouTube, tons of breath work. One of my personal favorites is Breathe with Sandy. He does a really good job of also, like, in the description letting people know if it's like beginner friendly or who should not perhaps do a certain breath work. So, he has a ton of stuff out there. There are a ton of different somatic classes, yoga, different, tons of different stuff. So we're in the age of air, right? Why wouldn't we lean on all the free stuff out there? And people love, giving back in that way.
Yeah. I just posted the link to the Breathe with Sandy. So if you feel like going and checking that out, you got something to check out. You got something to check out right now. But yeah, YouTube is a huge source for all kinds of things that you just, if you're like, I don't know how to do XYZ, you can just look it up on YouTube and it'll help you figure it out. I love all the channels lately that are dedicated to the simple things. So like maybe someone didn't learn, I taught my kid how to fix the chain in the toilet whenever it gets all kinked up. But if I hadn't been around, he can just go to YouTube and go, how do I, my toilet is running. What do I do? And you can
Yeah.
find so many people who are just willing to be like, I'm gonna be your dad for a minute. I'm gonna be your mom for a minute, and here's how you do that.
I
So
know.
I love
I'm
it.
an aspiring homesteader, so I've been looking up a lot of like chicken videos and things like that.
Yes. Yes, I love that.
YouTube University, but again, discernment with all things, right?
Yeah.
Because not all of the people out there are high vibe, and
hmm
so
Well, and also whenever you're on there, you're talking about homesteading. That put me into like the gardening zones mindset of things. And it's definitely a case even with some mental health things where if you go to a channel and you're like, oh, what they're doing isn't working for me. If it's a gardening channel, they may be in a completely different zone than you. And so what they are talking about literally will not work for you. And whenever it comes to mental health, it's kind of the same. Like the garden of your mind is just in a different zone and you got to find something different that works for you. So,
yeah.
just because one video doesn't work for you, you can see if something else does.
Yeah, that's such a good journey, and learning that discernment too, which
hmm
can be hard when our window of tolerance is already very small. It's hard to kind of discern, we're in that squirrel phase just trying to do anything, but absolutely, and it's okay if something's not working to throw it out the window, right?
hmm You said chickens. Do you have any other pets that you're working with? Do you have goats or anything yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
I just sort of moved into this new property with 12 acres
Oh
less than a
wow.
year ago, so still very much in the developmental phase. So if anybody has any tips and tricks, let me know.
I love that. That's fantastic. Well, what a fun experience.
Yes, yes, and being close to nature for me has been, a pivotal part of the healing journey too. And yeah, that's something people can do for no cost is just go put your feet on the earth somewhere.
hmm Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah. And that can be really, really healing too. There are studies out there about, if you can't get outside to nature for some reason, pulling up a picture of a forest on your computer or on your phone or something like that can provide a certain level of that grounding as well. But of course, it's better to put your feet on the actual earth. But if you can't for some reason,
Or
it's
get a house plant. Everyone has
yeah,
a plant. It's like bring the nature in some way, and
yes.
yeah. Hmm.
Highly recommend a ZZ plant if you are not a house plant person and you want something that won't die. A ZZ plant is really good, or a pothos plant is really good because pothos plants they look like they're dying all of a sudden because they need water, and then you give them water and they come right back and they're perfectly fine. They're just very dramatic. And so it's like if you see it every day, just and it looks sad, you give it water and it's going to come right back. So ZZ plants
Yeah,
and pothos are excellent house plants.
that's good advice because I know there are, on my journey, it was like there were times where I wasn't even taking care of myself, let
Yeah.
alone another thing. So,
Yep. Absolutely. So, Bite Mark would like to know what is your favorite poem?
oh, so I have come to really love the poem Guest House by Rumi. And
Ah.
yes, I discovered it actually in my work with psychedelics, and it's one that we use in the clinic that I work at a lot to prepare people to enter that journey, and it's beautiful.
I love that. I'm going to post a link to that one right now because it's a good one. It's a pretty short one. It's a pretty short one.
Yes.
You can go and just read it real quick. Bro Milan, I see your comment. I think a certain loserette could even manage to still kill them. She kept that ZZ plant alive, though. That's why it's one of my recommendations. She's like my barometer for did she keep the plant alive? Great. It's going to live for pretty much anyone. But I'm also a huge proponent of if a plant dies under your care, either just get a second one of that plant and see because sometimes it just wasn't the time for it to thrive and that's fine. Or just get a different kind of plant. Like it's fine. It's fine. Just get another one. And if you get a pothos and you're somewhat local to me and it dies, just let me know and I will send you another one. They're so prolific that I'm happy to just send anyone. If you want one, just let me know. I'll send you
And
one.
always have some grace, have some
Yes.
grace with yourself. If the plant dies, then, cycle of life, I suppose.
Yes, absolutely. What is your favorite life hack?
Oh, my favorite life hack. Oh gosh. I have so many little tips and, just trying to keep things orderly with children. But my favorite life hack is prioritizing myself. That
Mm,
sounds a little extreme and maybe not the smallest hack, but when I really learned that and started to embody that and understood that it was not selfish, but it was essential for how I showed up as a mom, as a wife, all the things, life really started to become a lot more simple and a lot more ease in that. So
yeah.
that's my number one life hack. It is not selfish.
It's very true. That is one of the first things my therapist had to really beat me over the head with is say, like, look, you're not taking care of yourself. Of course you're depressed. Yes, you're in a serious situation and you seriously need to get out of it. But she couldn't say that for me until I identified it for myself. But she's like, yeah, you have all this stuff going on. Of course you're depressed. Of course you're anxious. Of course you have all this stuff happening in your body, but you're not taking care of yourself. And it's so important to take care of yourself because you're taking care of everyone else, and you can only take care of everyone else for so long without taking care of yourself as well. So it's
Mhm.
something that she really had to get me to understand in therapy. It took her a little while.
I'm so glad you had such a good therapist, and it's hard. I can only speak from the female experience, but we are not conditioned to operate that way.
Yeah.
Quite the contrary, right? It's like overgive, 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 and for me, my body literally started attacking itself in the form of autoimmune disease, so it
Hmm.
became quite apparent that, the way I was moving about the world wasn't working, and I have to prioritize myself if I want to be able to show up.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to really unlearn, right? Unlearn, but it is the best life hack. If you can really embody that, it's like, wow,
Yeah.
wow.
Yep. Well, it is time for the magic moment of the stream. And folks who are here, that means we're coming up kind of towards the end. So if you have any questions about healing the nervous system or questions for B, make sure that you go ahead and ask them while we are here and while we are live. But B, I'll ask you if you could wave a magic wand and eliminate one common opinion or misconception surrounding mental health, what would it be?
I love that. I would eliminate this misconception that trauma or mental health is all just a mindset problem.
Mm,
We cannot mindset our way out of trauma. You cannot positive affirmation, positive, this in a body that's still feeling unsafe.
yeah, that's a big one, most definitely.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to post your links one more time for everyone. And while I'm doing that, if there's anything additional or resources you want to throw out, or sites or anything you got going on, feel free to just talk about it. I'll post your links one more time for everybody to connect with you.
Yes, I would love for everyone to head to the website, jump on the mailing list. I do have my first book coming out very soon, Keepers of the Light, and it does detail my healing journey and also is designed to bring bring readers on their own healing journey, bring them through that with a lot of practical. I'm a practical person. I'm a Taurus, so real life everyday things that we can start to do to really go on that healing journey. Not the destination, the journey. So look out for the book.
I love that. Do you have a date for your book when it's going to come out, or is it just a TBD working on it?
TBD, yes.
Okay.
Unfortunately, as I'm learning, the process is not quite like having a baby where you get a due date. It's like, wow, I'm at the mercy of publishers and,
Yes.
editors. So but that's kind of part of the fun of it too. So stay
Yeah.
tuned.
Got to go to that website. Got to get on that mailing list so you know when it comes out.
That's right. That's right. We'll keep you in suspense a little bit.
Yeah. Well, to everyone who is here with us live, I'm going to disconnect with B in just a moment, but I've got a puzzle for y'all to work on in the meantime. I hope you got a lot out of that conversation, especially that healing is something that is possible no matter how dark things may seem. And sometimes it starts with just one small thing. B, thank you so much for your service, first of all. Thank you for your courage and for showing up today and really sharing your story with the Even Tacos Fall Apart community. Oh, uh-oh. I think I lost audio again. That's unfortunate. But I could tell you were saying thank you. Again, just to everyone who's watching, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being exactly who you are. I will be right back. Do not go anywhere.